I think most people probably who watch this have said something dumb, have said something that they wish they had put differently.
And you said it over in several different venues.
In a very, very short period of time. It was sort of a thing that I picked up on. I said it a couple of times in a couple of interviews. And look, yeah, I mean, I certainly wish that I had said it differently. I mean, what I was trying to get at is that, look, I'm not talking about people who it just didn't work out, right? For medical reasons, for social reasons, like set that to the side. We're not talking about folks like that. What I was definitely trying to illustrate in, ultimately a very inarticulate way is that I do think that our country has become almost pathologically anti-child. I put this in a couple of different ways, right? So there's one, it was actually when I was in law school. It was on a train between New York and New Haven. I think I was doing like law firm interviews or something. And obviously I didn't have kids then. And there's this young girl gets on the train. She's probably 21 or 22. She's, young black female, clear, like, by the way she was dressed. She didn't have a whole lot of money. She had a couple of kids with her. And, I remember like just watching her and thinking like, this is a really unbelievably patient mother. I mean, for being literally younger than I was, the reason I sort of noticed her is because her kids, like a lot of kids that age, are complete disasters, especially on public transportation. They turn it up to 11, but she was being so patient. But then like everybody around her was also noticing the kids being misbehaved, and they were so angry. And, they were and sighing and staring every time her 2-year-old made a noise. And that was sort of a moment that kind of stuck with me. And then, of course, I've had similar experiences riding with my own kids on various modes of public transportation. And again, it just sort of hit me like, okay, this is really, really bad. This thing that we do where we make motherhood or fatherhood, or there's this, again, I do think that there's like this pathological frustration with children that just is a new thing in American society. I think it's very dark. I think you see it sometimes in the political conversation, people saying, well, maybe we shouldn't have kids because of climate change. When I've used this word sociopathic, like that, I think is a very deranged idea. The idea that you shouldn't have a family because of concerns over climate change doesn't mean you can't worry about climate change, but in the focus on childless cat ladies,
so are you saying that women who don't want to have children?
Substance of what I said.
Sorry. I just want to clarify something. So women who don't have children because they're worried about climate change, that's sociopathic?
I think that is a bizarre way of thinking about the future. Not to have kids because of concerns over climate change. I think the more bizarre thing is our leadership, who encourages young women and frankly young men to think about it that way. Bringing life into the world has totally transformed the way that I think about myself, the way that I think about my wife, the way that I think, you watch your grandparents interact with grandchildren. It is like a transformatively positive and good thing for there to be children in the world. And if your political philosophy is saying, don't do that because of concerns over climate change, yeah, I think that's a really, really crazy way to think about the world.
We don't know why Kamala Harris did not have children, but do you include Kamala Harris in the category of women that you're talking about?
No, look, it was everything I know about Kamala Harris that I've learned about Kamala Harris is that she's got a step family, she's got an extended family, she's a very good stepmother to her stepchildren. I would never accuse Kamala Harris along these lines. What I would say is that sometimes Kamala Harris, she hasn't quite jumped over you shouldn't have kids because of climate change. But I think in some of her interviews, she's suggested there's a reasonableness to that perspective. But again, I don't think that's a reasonable perspective. I think that if your political ideas motivate you to not have children, then that is a bizarre way of looking at the world. Now, again, sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes people choose not to have children. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the political sensibility that's very anti-child. And again, I think that what really bothers me about the childless cat lady's comment, aside from the fact that, of course, it offended a lot of people, and I understand that, but it actually distracted, my wife had made this point, it's distracted from the core point of what I was making, which is that there is something very anti-family and very anti-child that has crept into American society. And you see it, I think, if you take your kid on an airplane, you see it if you take your kid to a restaurant and people, huff and puff at you. You see it in some of our political policies. I mean, go back to 2020, and I don't talk about this much because most Americans don't care about